The story of my second kayaking trip to the Small Isles in 2023. This time solo kayaking round Eigg and Muck in August. Just a few weeks earlier I'd circumnavigated Rum, Sanday and Canna and also popped over to Eigg for a night. My plan this time was to complete the Small Isles by going round Eigg and Muck. I planned to take the Kayaking ferry out of Mallaig, this time to Glamersdale on Eigg, then circumnavigate Eigg and Muck over 3 days, returning to Glamersdale to get the ferry back. These islands are fully exposed to weather systems and swell. The rugged coastline has a few landing spots. Strong tides run around the headlands and between the islands, so settled weather is essential for a successful trip. I'd originally planned to do this trip with a mate, but his availability and suitable weather windows didn't seem to coincide, so it ended up as a solo trip at very short notice, when I took advantage of a very short window of calm weather squeezed between two very active weather systems. So the same day as I spotted the weather opportunity, I decided to go, and I was packed and on the road by mid-afternoon for the long drive up to Mallaig. Once again I stopped at Mallaig Harbour, where I spent a very comfy night in the car. It was a fairly early start and a lovely morning. I packed the kayak and then it was another trundle down a very quiet Mallaig high street. It was just a few weeks earlier I'd done the same thing. It felt really good to be back. After a big breakfast in the cafe, I returned to the boat and had just a short wait before boarding.
Life buoys and other buoyant apparatus, all of which can be manually launched or will float free in the event of the ship sinking.
After the very reassuring, routine, dual language safety announcement, we were off for the 1 hour 40-minute crossing to Glamersdale on Eigg. What a lovely morning it was, with fine views to Eigg and Rum. Glamersdale jetty with Egg's highest point and Sker dominating the skyline.
Yeah, thanks, where's the vessel now? Berthing in Eigg, foot past disembarking.
Time to disembark. The place was a hive of activity, with the hustle and bustle of foot passengers coming and going, and produce of all sorts being sorted out on the jetty. Before long the ferry was sailing. The people were all gone and the place was deserted, leaving me alone in peace and quiet to sort out my final bits and then get going. My plan for today was to paddle the southwest corner and part of the west side of Eigg, and then head across the Sound of Eigg and camp on the east side of Muck. The wind strength was forecast to increase in the afternoon and may have challenging conditions in the Sound. So I paddled out into Glamersdale Bay and headed south round Castle Island. Conditions were very calm, but I knew I was sheltered here. Round past the Stevenson Lighthouse, and then on past a snoozing seal. As I rounded the point and headed west, I left the shelter and started to feel the northwesterly breeze. Soon the west side of Eigg was in view, with Ansker looking very impressive with its heather-covered banks. The paddling conditions were superb. However, with the freshening northwesterly wind, a 3-knot tide running through the Sound, and 6k of open water to cross, which would take me just over an hour, I needed to assess if conditions were suitable to cross the Sound to Muck as planned. As I reached my crossing point, it was decision time. Although from my low position in the water, I couldn't really see what conditions were like in the middle of the Sound. However, it looked just a bit lumpy, so I headed off with confidence and positive energy. About halfway across, the wind wasn't increasing and the sea state was fine, so all was good. This was a super paddle. I'd made a good call. As anticipated, I could feel the wind and tide pushing me south, so I had to significantly compensate with a big transit to the north. As I got closer to Muck, I spotted a small beach and possible landing spot a bit further south than the one I was heading for, so I cut across and went to suss it out. As I got closer, it looked very promising. This spot was fantastic, a great beach, a flat grassy very secluded camp, a fantastic view, and it was sheltered from the northwesterly wind. I soon had the boat unpacked and the tent set up, and then moved the boat up to the tent. After a brew, I went looking for some firewood, but unfortunately couldn't find any. Soon it was time for a beer, some food, and time to chill and just soak up the vibe and the view. After food, I had another walk to look for firewood, but again I drew a blank. Then time for whiskey. While it's good to kayak with mates, I find one of the pleasures of solo sea kayaking is that the feeling of adventure, isolation, remoteness, and becoming immersed in the sheer beauty of the places we find ourselves in are significantly enhanced by experiencing them on your own. I was in no rush to go to bed that evening, even though I had planned a very early start the next morning. My day one GPS track. Day 2. It was an early 4 AM alarm call so that I could work with the tides on today's paddle. The midges were up early as well, so I ate breakfast on the hoof. Today I plan to continue round Muck anti-clockwise, calling in at the only obvious landing spot all day, Port Moor, for a leg stretch and a snack, before heading back across the Sound of Eigg, then up the west and north of Eigg clockwise onto Singing Sands for the night's camp. The early start allowed tides to be mainly with me for the 15-mile paddle. Yesterday's fresh breeze had subsided, so I headed off north in very calm conditions. The view across to Rum and Eigg with sky coolings in the distance was super. Round the northern tip of Muck, Island, I had the choice of cutting through the gap or going all the way round. I opted to go round. I had a little bit of tidal movement round the north tip of Each. Tides run up each side and meet at this point. Looking back, what a fantastic view. along the western side of Muck, heading southeast. Although not quite as dramatic as the cliffs of the other small isles, Muck certainly had a very isolated and wild feel about it. I soon reached Port Moore. I'd loosely arranged to call in and say hi to Alex and Tony, who I'd met while walking the previous night. They were in a day sailor, doing a similar journey as me. I found their boat and pulled into the pontoon for a chat. They were just up. Well, it was only about 8:30 in the morning. While it would be nice to stay and chat longer, the tides dictated I pushed on. I was soon heading round the southern tip of Eigg and up the east side. Circumnavigation of Eigg before 9:30 in the morning wasn't bad going. As I headed across the sound, it was glass-like, a bit calmer than yesterday's crossing. Once across the sound, I headed north up the west side of Eigg. Soon I was at the west tip of Eigg and started heading northwest. Once again I pondered how different this place would be with a different weather and sea state. Today it was in a very relaxed mood. However, on a different day it would certainly be a very hostile place. At the northwestern headland, with a fine view of Rum and the Sky Coolins in the distance. The cliffs and views here were amazing. What another great paddle this was. My planned camp spot, Singing Sands up ahead, a place I'd previously camped on my first trip to the small isles a few weeks ago. Moving the kayak on solo trips can be a real pain, but both beaches on this trip were very trolley friendly. I set up camp in the exact spot I'd used a few weeks earlier. It was like coming home. After a snack, I went for a walk up to the northern summit of Eigg, Dunan Thalasker. As I got towards the summit, it looked like there was some wet weather heading my way. I made it to the summit in the dry. I also made it all the way down, but just in time, as the summit was lost in the mist when I got back to the tent. Very soon the rain came, so my hard-earned beer was drank in the tent. The rain persisted, so my meal was also eaten in the tent. The rain eased, but the mizzle or Scottish smur remained, the sort that soaks you within seconds, though you can hardly see it. So it was another night without a fire, confined to the tent with a book, some music, and of course a glass or two of whiskey, so all was good. My GPS tracked day 2. Day 3, my final day. Another very early 4 AM start to avoid paddling against the tide. Once again the midges were awake and ready for their food as well. The rain had gone and the view to rum was returning. By the time I was getting sorted out, the sun was coming up and it was a lovely morning. Today's plan was to continue clockwise round Eigg back to Glamersdale, about 7 miles, and get the afternoon ferry back to Mallaig. What a great morning. I felt very privileged to be here, paddling on a morning like this. Round the northern tip of Eigg and a view up to the Dunan Thalasker summit I'd walked up to last night. I was soon round the northern tip and heading south into a stiff breeze. The quality of light and the scenery here were just amazing. On past the wreck of the steam puffer Jenny, which ran aground in February 1954 and was later deposited into Puffer Cave by winter storms. Once again on such a benign day as this, a reminder that these places are very hostile in different weather. The views across to the mainland were truly spectacular. This was a very special last day's paddle, and that stiff breeze had even died off. An unexpected sandy landing spot, so I took advantage for a break and brief explore. The basalt columns on the cliffs here were very impressive. I slowed the pace and soaked it all in. I didn't want this trip to end, but knew there was some very bad weather forecast for the next few days, so I had to move on. Back at Glamersdale, with Anne Skur once again dominating the scene. Well, that's the paddling part of the trip complete, and what a super trip it's been. I was feeling very content. My GPS track for day 3. Then time to move the boat and get changed. I was in good time for the ferry, so I popped into the excellent community cafe for some lunch, and probably the best burger I've ever tasted. Highly recommended. The ferry arrived to get me on time, and soon it was the final part of the trip, the boarding and the journey back to Mallaig. For me, this is all a fun part of the trip. From the ferry, a chance to view the route of my morning's paddle. Back in Mallaig and normality with the crowds. Think I need another solo trip away from all this.